Welcome to BW Business World. Today I have with me Ajitesh Basani, Executive Director of Acharya Bangalore B School. Welcome, Mr. Basani. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things we saw during the COVID pandemic is that a lot of the education initiatives that we had kind of fell back because of the mass shutdown of schools, and we did face a lot of dropouts as well. Now, in light of that, there's a lot of recovery to be done. So I would like to start by asking you, what are the main reasons for dropouts, do you think?
Dropout phenomenon has always been there prior to COVID, and after COVID it is accelerated. So there's a lot of research in this which kind of says that student dropouts, mainly in schools, are due to the socio-economic factors. So when you say socio-economic factors, it comes down to the family's average income. It's basically finances. It comes down to the parents' educational backgrounds. There is a lot of correlation between how educated a parent is to a student dropping out of school. And there are other factors like the caste of the caste that the student belongs to. I think these factors, apart from whether the family has two people working or it's a single household family or the number of siblings, all these are essentially socio-economic factors. And we've seen that from time and again, not just now but over the last several years. These factors have played a huge role in identifying which student is likely to drop out of school.
So definitely, like when we hear the word dropout, people also associate that with, the kind of people who drop out and become successful entrepreneurs. But that's not the biggest cases, right? The biggest case is definitely financially motivated as opposed to someone who's looking for better opportunities outside of schools. So in light of that, now that things are starting to open back up, what do you think? How can we bring students back into these schools?
One, of course, the whole COVID situation has put students in a different mindset altogether. Mainly because they're not used to this offline environment. To bring them back would be a big challenge, but we are seeing schools see great enrollment rates, mainly because I think parents are also aware that the time has come for them to let go of that fear of getting kids back to the school. That's one aspect, and the other aspect that we need to really look at is the overall benefit that NEP 2020 has brought in, and it's really embracing the student. The child is at the center of everything, and this wasn't exactly the case earlier. So what's going to happen is the students are going to benefit a lot more. The children are going to benefit a lot more from the new policies, and apart from that, I think schools are going to become more pro-student, pro-children, in a way that everything is centered around them and making it more enjoyable, less stressful, and not focusing too much on marks, but focusing more on the overall development, whether it's sports, whether it's creativity, whether it's learning outside the classroom.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a lot of things that need to kind of come together for this to be possible. But for those of students who maybe can't make it back to schools because, like you said, once you're out of school, it's very difficult to kind of get them back into the system. What other alternatives do you think are out there?
So the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is to ensure students finish school firstly, but to encourage them itself is a task on its own. And this cannot be possible without the support of governments, because they should incentivize people into getting their kids into schools. Because I'm talking more at the grassroots levels where family incomes are not as high as we would like them to be. These are the kids who would benefit the most, and most of the people who need to go to school are these kids who are below the certain income level that we're looking at. And having these schemes would really encourage them. I think the government is doing their fair bit, but the only alternate solution that I could probably think of is developing the state-run schools, because there's a lot of pressure on privately run schools at the moment, even because of the right to education. So I think developing the basics. I think a few states are doing it. I know that a few states in the north are doing that. They're focusing a lot more on building the brick and mortar models of the school education. And this, by default, will encourage people from the poorer backgrounds, people from a certain income level to actually come back and ensure that these kids are getting educated.
Yeah, absolutely. And the government has also taken these initiatives like the digital university that they want to begin, and the whole idea of creating this digital infrastructure is to kind of like reach out to all these rural areas and parts to kind of get people access to education, so that at least they have that choice. So, what role do you think like the technology is going to play when it comes to sort of bringing people back into the school system?
So, the thing with technology is it always comes back to the digital divide conundrum, right? Because firstly, do all these people have access? And if they have access, it's a lot easier to penetrate into the entire, the age group of 6 to 18. But if the access isn't there, it's really difficult to bring in technology, because the hardware is your medium to the digital aspect. So I think till that day comes, I think it's a question that we shouldn't really think too much about, and focus more on the physical infrastructure. And I think even in India, we do emphasize a lot on both the online and offline forms of learning. But over time and again, it has proven that there are its drawbacks and benefits. So bringing students to actual classrooms or actual environments where learning happens more than teacher to student and peer to peer, I think that's more beneficial in terms of the overall growth of a child.
Absolutely. And my final question to you is, being in a position of you're part of the education, the academia world, what kind of changes would you like to see in the education sector?
I think the changes are happening right now, not just in terms of policy, but in terms of the way institutions are aligning themselves. And today we have close to 40,000 institutions, higher education institutions across the country. The next 10 years will probably see a lot of consolidation happening, and that number could come down to 25,000 or 30,000, we don't know. But the good thing about that is the good ones will survive, and the bad ones, or the ones that aren't doing their jobs, will cease to exist. So the good thing is the area of education is going to become more and more collaborative. I would like to see more collaboration, not just in the forms of internships and project works, but deeper, meaningful collaborations with even partner universities or the industry also. And apart from collaboration, the other aspect is, I keep mentioning experimentation. You need to experiment, because one school or one institution is not the same as the other. You need to figure out what works best for you. And end of the day, all institutions are looked at as people with different personalities. So we get the most out of a different, diverse set of institutions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mr. Basani.
Thank you. Thank you so much.